Illinois counts mail-in ballots received up to 2 weeks after Election Day. Petitioners contend that under controlling federal law, that is 2 weeks too long. As a result, if the petitioner's merits theory is credited, which it must be for evaluating standing, then Illinois is counting unlawful ballots. Those unlawful ballots could cost Congressman Bost the election or at least reduce his margin of victory, and he has to pay his campaign staff for 2 extra weeks. All of that means that Congressman Bost has standing 3 times over. The court below lost sight of that straightforward conclusion only by misreading this court's precedents and misperceiving candidates who pour untold time and treasure into the election and are the ones whose names are actually on the ballot as mere bystanders with a generalized grievance. That decision is not only wrong, but dangerous. It needlessly injects federal courts into the role of political prognosticators. It risks denying judicial access to minor party candidates, and it shuffles election disputes into the closest races and the worst possible context. Election disputes after the election where federal courts are in the uncomfortable position of having to pick the political winners. There is a better way, and it simply requires acknowledging that candidates have a unique, concrete, and particularized interest in the rules of the electoral road, especially those that address which ballots are going to be counted and when. At a bare minimum, a longer campaign is a more expensive campaign, and that classic pocketbook injury is sufficient to give Congressman Bost standing. There is no need to make the standing inquiry here any more complicated than that. A candidate is not a bystander in his or her own election. Their name's on the ballot, they put their lives on hold, so they have a special interest in what's on the ballot.
Hey everyone, Judicial Watch just got out of the Supreme Court. We're arguing for our client, Congressman Bost, that candidates have a right to challenge election rules like in Illinois where they count ballots that are received for up to 14 days after the election. The Supreme Court seems primed to rule in our favor. We won't know until the opinion's issued, but there are many concerns about denying candidates the right to challenge elections of the law.
I was in court, again, as client for Judicial Watch, and Jim Peterson was representing us today. We're in federal court before Judge Reggie Walton here in the District of Columbia. And across the room from us was a lawyer for the Trump administration, a federal government lawyer who came in and argued on behalf of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, why Judicial Watch and the American people shouldn't gain access to the details of a grant the USAID made to an entity in Gaza to the tune of $7 million and counting. They don't want to tell us the name, what the grant was for, what they were expected to do, who they were expected to help, none of those details. And this is a position first generated or created under the Biden administration last year when we first started asking for this record and suing for these records in court. And then just recently, the Trump administration ratifies it by saying, oh yeah, this is our legal position. We can't get information about who they're helping in Gaza. Now, what is our concern about that? It's because USAID money and humanitarian money generally from the West, it's notoriously everyone who's been watching the situation, has any expertise in the area, knows that that money goes to help Hamas and terrorists generally. Now, does it mean it doesn't help some people? Of course it helps some people. They're spending so much darn money, but it empowers, enables, and usually benefits the terrorists as well. I guarantee you that's the reason we can't get the info. And they come up with these new reasons. There's always a new reason not to get information out of this gang. And I'm disappointed that Pam Bondi's Justice Department and Marco Rubio's State Department has a lawyer in court arguing against us. I mean, come on. I mean, it's one thing to be arguing in the Biden administration over this. I can't believe we're doing this now. Man, I'm so angry I can't even read the paper I got. Ex-USAID official says Biden ditched vetting reforms as his administration steered grants to terror supporters. That's from the the Free Beacon. Testified to Congress. I approve strong vetting policies for humanitarian assistance in countries swarming with terrorists. That, too, was ignored by the Biden administration, said this former USAID official. He added that vast sums of U.S. money have been diverted to fund terrorists in Gaza, Syria, Yemen, and Afghanistan, and NGOs have been hit with heavy fines for violating our anti-terrorism financing laws. And so they come up with new excuses to cover up what I believe is likely what happened is that they gave a $7 million grant plus upwards of $20 million, $24 million, depending on how you count the numbers, to these Gaza recipients with little or no check as to what they were doing with it. Heck, the reason they don't want to tell us... Oh, here's the press release. Judicial Watch, USAID won't reveal aid recipients in Gaza. Marco Rubio, what's going on? You're now running USAID. Why are you allowing this to take place? Pam Bondi, you're running FOIA. You set the FOIA legal positions for the federal government. Your attorneys in the Justice Department, U.S. Attorney for D.C., they're defending the indefensible, coming up with new arguments to keep the American people from finding out what Biden was doing in Gaza. So they produce the records, USAID, but they just don't want to tell us any detail about where the money went to or who it went to. We can go to the first batch, because you can see it better maybe in the first batch. Go to page... Go to page 2. Page 2 of 99 in the document batch. You see this? Acknowledge. That's the person who signed it. B6, privacy. See what else we got here. Go to page 21 and 99 in the PDF. Overhead management. They don't even want to tell us what the costs were for overhead. Okay, now go down further to page 35, 34 of the document. This is where the rubber meets the road in terms of information. All of this is basic information about who's being helped, who's the money being directed to, what's it being directed for. Let's go down one page. All of that, all of this is blacked out. Now, the government's very smart. There's $7 million. That's the initial outlay. They don't want to tell us anything. Total number of people affected in the target area, B4. Total number of unique people targeted, B4. How is that a secret? B4 is commercial secrets. These are nonprofits receiving money. What's the commercially protected information in a grant for charitable activity in a war zone? And this is the excuse they're using. They gave us what's known as a Vaughan Index. A Vaughan Index is a name given to what's called a privilege log, which lists the documents or lists the reasons, and it's designed to provide information to a requester for information as to what records they're withholding and why. So because we can't, they obviously, if they want to withhold records, they can't give us the records and then say you can't read them. That's not going to happen. So they have to give us some information so we can argue about it. And this is what they say. Parties to the conflict in Gaza have specifically targeted and killed aid workers, targeted relief agency operations, and targeted and destroyed health facilities and other civilian targets. Due to highly challenging and unpredictable operating environments for humanitarian operations, the exemption is required to protect the employees and beneficiaries of the NGOs working in Gaza from the harassment and violence. Disclosure of the name of the NGO would allow third parties to determine the identities of employees and beneficiaries. So they could give $1 trillion to Gaza. And under that new rule, which has never been imposed on any FOIA requester as best we can understand it, we've got a lot of experience, 30 plus years of doing FOIA. There's no one with more experience in this town than your Judicial Watch. USAID is saying we can't find out who they're giving money to in Gaza. Now, if that makes no sense to you, I'll explain to you what the reason is. When something doesn't make any sense in a government situation, it's almost always politics. So the Biden administration realized, oh my gosh, this is what I'm speculating based on my experience. The Biden administration realized, oh, we're going to get caught giving money to terrorist-related groups. So let's come up with a reason to hide the recipient. And for whatever, the Trump administration took the argument and is running with it, and was arguing for that position in federal court today. So forgive me for being a little upset when the Trump Justice Department and State Department come in and argue for this outrageous secrecy. And I guarantee you, President Trump, if he knew, he'd be as outraged as I am. Rubio, would he be as outraged as I am? I think so. Pam Bondi would probably agree with me. And as far as I'm concerned, but people say, well, how can they know that? Well, they're supposed to know what's happening. Rubio and Bondi know, or should know what's happening. Secretary Rubio is now, I think, the acting head of USAID, practically speaking. And FOIA is a big deal. Certainly Pam Bondi knows FOIA. She's been involved in a FOIA controversy over Epstein. And it's not like we're not talking about it. I mean, I've been talking about this on social media, and Judicial Watch has, for weeks, if not months. I mean, go to the social media feed, look at our tweets on Gaza and such, and people are upset that Judicial Watch is having to still fight for this basic information. Now, Judge Walton, he said he was perplexed by the government's position, citing commercial secrecy and privacy to hide information about who's getting money in Gaza. Never before used to keep this type of information from the American people, as I say, as best we can tell. And then, of course, then you have to fight about how much longer we want to fight about it. The government wanted to fight about it for 2 extra months. And we said, come on, we've been fighting about it for months. You wouldn't even come to an agreement with us about getting a schedule in place that allows us to vet these issues before the court. And now you come in and now you say you want an extra 2 months. So the court pared back the request. So it's going to be at least 2 more months before the litigation, these issues are fully briefed. But of course, what can happen in the meantime is that they can just release the information. Who are you giving money to? What are they doing with it? What's it for? It's not a state secret. So we get all these documents, right? Look at all these documents. And no information. Unacceptable. So I'll keep you updated. Hopefully the Trump administration changes its mind and releases this information and stops wasting our time, our resources, and the government's time and resources defending the indefensible. And if not, we'll just keep on battling in court to get the transparency about a Biden administration scandal that is now being defended by the Trump administration. First up, James Comey, the worst FBI director in American history, and that's saying something. Corrupt, criminal, treacherous, has just been caught effectively threatening the life of the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. And what happened is he posted online the following picture, 8647. Let's go to number, and he says he just happened to run across that on the beach. So we're all supposed to believe that he just magically ran into this phrase, 8647. And if you don't know what it means kill President Trump. Now, I know there are other definitions of 86 that defenders of Comey have suggested, but in that context, it doesn't matter. It's the word literally is 8647 means kill the president. When you 86 someone in this context, you mean to kill them. And do I think he just ran across this on the beach and posted a photo? No, I don't. I think he knew what he was doing. And here's what his reaction was, suggesting that he knew he had done something wrong. I posted earlier a picture of some shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realize some folks associate those numbers with violence. Some folks, it is associated with violence. It never occurred to me that I oppose violence of any kind, so I took the post down. And since then, he's deleted his entire Instagram account. I don't believe his account. He makes it seem like he just ran across this number while walking down the beach. Do you believe it? I don't. It's like some episode of Lost. You walk down the beach and there's some message written with seashells. Who is he fooling? Not me. And nor, it looks like, is he fooling President Trump or key members of the Trump administration. Let's go to that video of President Trump responding to Comey's death threat.
He knew exactly what that meant. A child knows what that meant. If you're the FBI director and you don't know what that meant assassination. And it says it loud and clear. Now, he wasn't very competent, but he was competent enough to know what that meant. And he did it for a reason, and he was hit so hard. Because people like me, and they like what's happening with our country. Our country's become respected again, and all this. And he's calling for the assassination of the president.
Obviously, he apologized and said he doesn't.
Well, he
wasn't
apologized
calling
because
for
he was
violence. But
look, he's a very bad.
What do you want to see happen?
What
do you want to see happen?
I don't want to take a position on it because that's going to be up to Pam and all of the great people. But I will say this: I think it's a terrible thing, and when you add his history to that, if he had a clean history, he doesn't. He's a dirty cop. He's a dirty cop, and if he had a clean history, I could understand if there was a leniency, but I'm going to let them make that decision.
Well, President Trump, per usual, was right on target there. Of course, Comey knew. He knew better. He ain't fooling anyone. And in my view, it should be just a matter of when he's prosecuted, not if he's prosecuted. Tulsi Gabbard seems to share my same concerns. Let's go to the video of Tulsi, number 20.
Like him, who issued direct threats against the President of the United States, essentially issuing a call to assassinate him, must be held accountable under the law.
Do you believe Comey should be in jail?
I do. Any other person with the position of influence that he has, people who take very seriously what a guy of his stature, his experience, and what the propaganda media has built him up to be, I'm very concerned for the president's life. We've already seen assassination attempts. I'm very concerned for his life. And James Comey, in my view, should be held accountable and put behind bars for this.
The left and Democrats want to get Trump killed. I've told you this before, and I'll tell you again. It's further evidenced in Comey's death threat to President Trump. Quite obviously a death threat. Remember, Benny Thompson, the senior Democrat leader in the House, offered a piece of legislation to deny President Trump Secret Service protection if he was, quote, convicted by one of their lawless judges in their kangaroo court proceedings, with the thinking that he would go to Rikers without Secret Service protection, which would be a death sentence. The Biden administration deprived him of Secret Service protection, adequate Secret Service protection, restricting his activities and leading to not one but tier 2 near-death experiences by the president. And we're supposed to believe that this leading anti-Trump activist, James Comey, who had it in for Trump from the get-go, just innocently posted this? I don't buy it. And maybe he has a defense, but my view is he should tell it to the jury. And we've been investigating Comey for years. And one of the outrages of what happened to Trump is that Comey was never prosecuted for the abuses of his targeting Trump, where he literally personally spied on him as he's coming into office, authorized interference and operations against the president and previous to that, his campaign in ways never seen before in American history. He stole and leaked President Trump's FBI files. And Bill Barr, the Attorney General for President Trump, didn't bother to prosecute him. Outrageous. And I had a little video on this. I think it was what video was it? Or the 2019 video. Let's go to that.
Comey was spying on Trump. Well, the reason he was writing the memos was to create a record so that he could destroy him. I'm paraphrasing, admittedly, but that's pretty clear what was going on. This report confirms they went in to confront him with that ambush interview because they were trying to make a case against him. You had the FBI director under Obama playing spy. We're talking about spying on the Trump campaign, spying on President-elect Trump, spying on President Trump. Comey was the chief spy, and he was designated as such by Barack Obama because they met about this very issue a day or two before in the Oval Office with Barack Obama, Biden, Susan Rice, all the king's horses, all the king's men in there. And Comey was the go-to guy.
That's right. I'm getting mad watching me from several years ago. I may not play videos from that long ago. It's disturbing how much older I've gotten since then. But we don't forget here at Judicial Watch about this corruption. And so when you're considering whether Comey's, quote, innocent, as President Trump says, he's not an innocent guy. He's a dirty cop, and him threatening Trump's life is not only perfectly consistent for his behavior, but of the Democratic left generally in recent years, where they've embraced violence and the threat of violence in order to achieve their results. And as I noted in that previous video, it's not just Comey, it was the whole gang that targeted Trump. And they all knew, and particularly Comey knew, that there was never any basis, as I highlighted in this major speech to CPAC a few years ago.
Judicial Watch protected Trump and our republic from the worst corruption scandal in American history by exposing the FISA abuse, the Comey corruption, and the seditious conspiracy against Trump by the FBI and DOJ. Obama knew, Clinton knew, Comey knew, Biden knew, Brennan knew, McCabe knew, Strzok knew, Clapper knew, Schiff knew, the FBI knew, the DOJ knew, the CIA knew, the State Department knew. They all knew Trump was innocent, but they smeared and spied on him anyway. Worse than Watergate. Trump is a crime victim. Let's remember that.
And he's a crime victim again as a result of this gang, specifically Comey's death threat against him, a threat issued while he was overseas, increasing the risk. And again, elevating through his Instagram account. You know, Comey's he's on TV, he's a public figure. So it wasn't like some guy in the far off never reaches of the internet posted a threat. He's a serious public figure. Now, I don't take him seriously, but this corrupt city does too often. And he abused and seemingly violated the law to put the president's life at risk. Now, our friend Susan Crabtree reported online Twitter the other day, or on X, that for threats such as this, the Secret Service normally just goes immediately to the person who made the threat. They don't wait days to pursue online threats made against the President of the United States. So my guess is that Comey's already been interviewed, or he's about to be interviewed, like not 3 days from now, but if not this evening, but over the weekend. And so the question is there going to be a prosecution as a result of that interview and the evidence gathered by the Secret Service or the FBI, understanding FBI is providing some backup support. And as President Trump noted, that he didn't want to say anything because it's Pam Bondi's decision. And, in the way things have worked in Washington, D.C. before, too often it is Pam Bondi's decision. The United States Attorney General, as appropriate, makes prosecutorial decisions of this nature. But that's purely at the discretion of the President of the United States, who is chief prosecutor. And I've said it once, and I'll say it again, if I were President Trump, I would direct the prosecution of these gangsters in government that abused him. And in the case of James Comey, the FBI director, he had to fire because of his corruption and abuse. He's president. He's prosecutor in chief. He can direct the prosecution of James Comey right now. Now, he may not choose to exercise it for fear of causing a political fight over that or for some practical reasons. But he does have that power. And my thinking is he should exercise it forcefully, especially in matters like this. His life is on the line. His Secret Service agents around him, death threats, they could get killed as well. Citizens around him could get killed as well. We saw that with the assassination in Butler, the assassination attempt. An innocent American was murdered that day as well. People injured. So this isn't just about President Trump. It's about other innocents in the vicinity of a president during an assassination attempt. And so I would just get on the horn and tell Attorney General Bondi, if I were President Trump, prosecute him. I'm directing you as president. If you don't want to do it, I'll find someone else. Now, my guess is, in these circumstances, Pam Bondi's going to do it. Pam Bondi's going to do it. But you never know, right? And so President Trump, the best way to ensure that something is done, in many cases, is to do it yourself, right? And he can do it literally himself by ordering the prosecution. And this kind of raises the bigger question of the Justice Department and the FBI. Who runs the show there? And I highlighted last week, and it bears repeating, that we need to really put those agencies under the microscope. James Comey is a perfect example. He was director of the FBI and ran the agency like some sort of Stasi against the political enemies of the deep state, working hand in glove with the Obama gang and essentially partnering with the Hillary Clinton campaign to target Trump. Now, I haven't seen any move by the new leadership of the FBI, Kash Patel, who I consider to be a friend, Dan Bongino, to curtail the FBI's powers in the sense of defanging the FBI, laying people off in mass numbers like is happening at USAID and the Department of Education. If I were director of the FBI or I were president, I would direct the FBI director to essentially make the FBI, in terms of if indeed there is a statutory minimum for the FBI to operate, I would say to Kash Patel, let's get down to that. Because there's nothing the FBI is doing that can't be handled by another federal agency in terms of law enforcement or, frankly, even counterintelligence if necessary. And the same goes with the Justice Department to a lesser extent, because there may be some more statutory bases for allowing some more people to work at the Justice Department. And the other issue is who investigates the FBI over these abuses I've talked about. The targeting of Trump under the Biden administration, Justice Department and the FBI. Who investigates the investigators? I don't think they can do it themselves. And so the president should stand up a separate entity, funded with Justice Department dollars, but reporting to him in the White House, appoint a prosecutor that reports to him directly, partners with Attorney General Bondi as the prosecutor deems fit, and just prosecute, investigate, call grand juries. And the president, as the chief prosecutor, or the prosecutor in chief as I call him, he can decide in the end what to prosecute and what not to prosecute. He can even suggest areas of investigation. And actually more than suggest, direct areas be investigated as it relates to the criminality of the weaponization by the Obama, Biden, Clinton gang against him. And think of all the other things that need to be investigated. The issue of the invasion. Who's responsible for that? The issue of censorship of Americans. Who's responsible for that? The Biden criminality, the Biden crime family. What's the Justice Department doing on that? I would just charge as if those pardons didn't exist because I think they're null and void. Let them raise them as defenses and argue that they're null and void. You can't issue a pardon to someone for no crimes going back 10 years. That's not a pardon. It doesn't mean anything. And this is the sort of thing that a president can get done, and it would be very difficult for Pam Bondi to get done or, frankly, Kash Patel to get done. I don't trust the FBI to investigate the FBI. I just don't. And I don't trust the Justice Department to investigate the Justice Department. I could have a half a dozen friends in both agencies. It doesn't matter. It's the institutions that are corrupted. And I don't think the American people trust them either. I mean, they're stonewalling on document after document in response to our FOIA request still. There's no significant criminal investigation, as best I can tell, of the lawfare against Trump and other innocent Americans. Time's a wasting. Time's a wasting. Of course, Congress is completely AWOL on this. So the FBI should be effectively shut down, at least my personal view is that. Others may have different views. I recognize that. But I don't trust them as far as I could throw them. Same goes for the IRS. IRS has been abused time and time again to target Americans. That's reason alone to shut it down. And this is the kind of thought process and thinking and leadership, you know, if I do say so myself, leadership necessary to protect the Republic. We've developed these deep state agencies, these administrative agencies at the federal level, whose goal, among other things, is to be ready, willing, and often able to target Americans on the basis of their political beliefs. Third world tyrannical activity. And if someone's using a gun repeatedly against you, and the gun being the IRS or the FBI or other agencies, you take the gun away. Now, does it mean they're going to stop their criminality? I'm not naive. But let's take the weapons out of the hands of the toddlers who are running the deep state. And that's a charitable interpretation of their behavior. This is the communist approach to governance. Jail and kill your enemies. And Comey is a malicious example of it. Really is. Did you hear about Letitia James, the corrupt Attorney General of New York? And I say corrupt, knowing her abusive office to try to jail Trump and harass him and destroy his business based on fanciful interpretations of law and abuses of power. Well, the Federal Home Finance Administration, I think it's called, has referred Letitia James to the Justice Department for potential criminal prosecution over financial fraud, mortgage fraud, the very issues that she pretended and falsely accused President Trump of engaging in as it relates to his real estate empire. And there's this report I watched on Instagram. Let's run it.
The Federal Housing Finance Agency has referred New York Attorney General Letitia James to the Justice Department for alleged mortgage fraud. FHFA Director William Polt sent a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche alleging James, quote, falsified records to secure home loans for a Norfolk, Virginia property. The letter claims she identified the Virginia property as her, quote, principal residence while she was a New York prosecutor. The letter also says James misrepresented her 5-family home in Brooklyn as only having 4 units. Polt says because she listed the unit as a 4-unit dwelling instead of 5, she could have reduced her mortgage rate by as much as 1% and had lower monthly payments. Polt also reportedly attached several documents detailing how James purchased another property with her father as a co-signer, but listed the pair as a, quote, husband and wife in 1983 and 2000.
Well, is she guilty? I don't know. I'm not going to say she's guilty. Do I trust her? No. Would it surprise me if she were guilty? No, given her misconduct in other matters. But it really highlights the hypocrisy, if true, of Letitia James. And remember, the targeting of Trump, both generally and specifically in this case, I'm convinced has always been to keep him from being able to prosecute them. And we're seeing an example of this, and I hope the official responsible for this got all the facts straight in asking for this criminal investigation of Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York. But there's got to be law enforcement against all sides. You can't, as a leftist, say, I only want Donald Trump to be investigated or prosecuted. But when similar issues arise for politicians you support, say, oh no, that's just purely political. Now, if it were up to me, I don't know if I'd allow the Justice Department to prosecute anybody these days, because I don't trust the institution that's been so corrupted. Who knows why they do anything? So yeah, we should be suspicious of federal prosecutions generally. But we also should be suspicious of corrupt politicians like Letitia James. So when information like this comes up, we should take a careful look. So Judicial Watch will be following up on this issue with our own FOIA investigations. I don't know if we'll file lawsuits. You never know until the option comes. And of course, we've been ongoing or been persistent and consistent and smashing through stone wall after stone wall on the lawfare targeting Trump generally. So, you know, the Justice Department doesn't seem to be doing much on it. No prosecutions, as best I can tell. No serious criminal investigations, as best I can tell. So we'll just keep on keeping on. Maybe they'll catch up to us. So the big news here in Washington, D.C. is the great move by President Trump to federalize the police in Washington, D.C. and deploy the National Guard to deal with the out-of-control crime problem. Under the home rule law that governs Washington, D.C., the president can take over the police department more or less for 30 days. He is the commander-in-chief of the National Guard and so can deploy it without having to ask anyone to deploy it in Washington, D.C. to address the out-of-control crime problem. And yes, it is out of control. Anyone who tells you crime in Washington, D.C. is okay or going down is oblivious, lying, or doesn't live here. And I don't think the oblivious category comprises anyone substantial. The lying category, as you know, is a large crowd, and everyone else pretending that crime in D.C. is okay doesn't live here. There isn't a person who lives here who thinks crime is okay and that it's sufficiently low to provide you the safety and security you deserve as a United States citizen, let alone what is necessary for a functioning capital of a major power such as the United States of America. I mean, if you can't come into our nation's capital as a federal employee, as a foreign diplomat, as a worker, someone doing business with Washington, D.C., someone touring Washington, D.C., a U.S. citizen coming to Washington, D.C. to petition their government under the First Amendment because you're in fear for your life and your personal safety, there's something seriously wrong. And under our Constitution, Congress has the authority to run the city, and they've basically delegated it to a corrupt local system that lets criminals run amok. The public safety is secondary to anything else they do, which is essentially promoting socialism and spending tax dollars. It's a nightmare here in the city. I'm a D.C. resident. I know it. In fact, I'm a D.C. As of today, I think I'm the only appointee to the D.C. government by President Trump. In addition to being Judicial Watch president, I'm a member of the Commission on Judicial Disabilities and Tenure, which is a body which oversees the ethics and the reappointment of Superior Court judges and Court of Appeals judges for the District of Columbia. And those are the local, what you would think of as the local judges here. They're appointed initially by the president and confirmed by the Senate. But as commissioner, I've been a commissioner for 5 years now, provided my views on election renomination or judicial renominations and to President Biden and President Trump. But I've seen up close and personal the dysfunction of the courts, some of which aren't the court's fault, and the dysfunction of the D.C. government generally. I issued this tweet the other day which described or summarized my concerns. I fully support President Trump's decision to take control of D.C. police and deploy the National Guard to restore the rule of law in Washington, D.C. And then I go into this issue about me being on the commission. I have witnessed up close the dysfunction and failures of the D.C. courts, federal and local prosecutors, and local D.C. government in protecting the public safety. I mean, even our commission can't get its work done because of this dysfunction. I know directly, for instance, that my commission is now unable to review a backlog of judicial complaints. These are ethics complaints due to lack of previously promised support from the mayor's office. So the mayor was promising us help, and we haven't gotten what's been promised. The judicial misconduct complaints may have serious ramifications for the public safety, but the commission doesn't have the staff or the budget to fully review them. So can you imagine, having complaints potentially about judges, and that if the complaints pan out could lead to, disclosure of judicial misconduct that has a public safety component? There could be those types of complaints in our system right now that our commission can't look at because we're unable to because of lack of resources. I mean, that's how out of control things are. And we're just one aspect, an important one, of the judicial system and the criminal justice system here in Washington, D.C. Our nation's capital is in crisis. There should be a top-to-bottom review of D.C. governance. Adding federal control of the police and National Guard resources is certainly necessary, but won't be sufficient to address the systemic, corrupt, and wasteful governance failures under home rule. President Trump took an important first step that I hope will ultimately lead to the rescue of my city. And it's your city too. It's your nation's capital. That's why the capital isn't part of a state. It's why the capital is controlled by Congress, because we all have an interest in the nation and a well-run center of culture, commerce, arts, and certainly government. And the left has zero interest in protecting that. They only see the district as a potential 51st state, which is absurd on its face and unconstitutional in my view, so they can get 2 more left-wing senators. And people like me, and frankly, there are many liberals who work in the city. They work in the commissions I'm talking about, or on the courts. The judges aren't Republican for the most part. And I think, I might disagree personally with some of their rulings in terms of being soft on crime, but I know they've got a lot of work to do, and they're completely overwhelmed. In large measure because the D.C. Council is out of control and leftist, and it's just your typical big city run by leftists. And we see this dysfunction in other cities, which in my view is intolerable for those cities as well. It's doubly intolerable for here in Washington, D.C. I mean, what got the president's personal attention, he's been very focused on this since he's come back, because he was outraged when he saw how horrible D.C. was when he got here to begin with in the first term. This young man, his nickname is Big Balls, a funny nickname. He was a member of the Doge team. I think he still was working in some capacity for the federal government. And he nearly was beaten to death after he tried to rescue a woman who was being hassled or carjacked or something. And there's story after story of federal officials, congressional staff, members of Congress being victimized by crime. And crime, I don't know if it's, quote, going down, as Judge Pirro has noted, going down from what to what? From rampage to mob violence? I mean, who are they kidding? No one buys it. I mean, look at this video the other day. I mean, it's so illustrative of why the city is dysfunctional. This leftist attacking the police the other day. This is my note is number 11, sandwich thrower.
Go fucking way! You bitch! Motherfucker! Oh! 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 It's fucking gun! Fucking gun! Fucking gun! Hey, get that!
So that punk had reportedly a salami sandwich that he threw at the police, and he got arrested. He's facing charges. And you know what? He works at the Justice Department, or at least used to work at the Justice Department. Another reason why I don't trust the Justice Department, because that's what the Justice Department is full of people like that, frankly, from my experience, willing to do activity like that. And Trump had a brilliant insight into the impact this kind of chaos and anarchy has on visitors to the city. And he talked about his dear old dad. Let's go to number 16.
Said, my father always used to tell me, I had a wonderful father, very smart, and he used to say, son, when you walk into a restaurant and you see a dirty front door, don't go in, because if the front door is dirty, the kitchen's dirty also. Same thing with the Capitol. If our Capitol's dirty, our whole country is dirty, and they don't respect us. So it's a very good question, actually.
I mean, he's always got the great insight. My family was talking about that quote the other day, and the story was my grandmother simply refused to eat in restaurants, just refused to eat in them. And so his father was probably of my grandmother's ilk when it came to the cleanliness of restaurants back in the day. But that's true. It's like the broken windows theory, right? That Rudy Giuliani famously implemented in cleaning up New York successfully. He said, you know, if all the windows are broken, it just undermines confidence in the public safety and invites more crime. Because it shows the rule of law, really, that civilization is kind of not running things. Civil society is broken down. And that's true in Washington, D.C. I mean, my concern about Washington, D.C. is that there are not enough National Guard, not enough federal resources. It's a big city. You need a lot of people to be deployed. It's not just in the high crime areas, it's in the so-called low crime areas where low crime is still too high. There isn't an area of the city that is immune from the criminal class that's been allowed to run rampant. And now the DC government has sued Trump to try to restrict his ability to get the police under control and direct their law enforcement. I'm not sure what the courts are going to do there, so there's always a fight. But more power to President Trump. This home rule experiment needs to be reevaluated. Our nation's capital is being destroyed from within for decades, and it needs to stop. It needs to stop.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.